Something to know about me is that I like Capcom. I like fighting games, and one of my favourite fighting game series is Super Smash Bros. So, I had an idea. For my first video, I will begin a 5-part series where I look at an alternate timeline. What if Capcom never made Fighting Jam, or Fighting Evolution to the North American market, and beat Nintendo to the punch and made their own platform fighting game crossover? And so, for this video, we will build the roster for Capcom Smash 64. Okay, so yeah, to immediately clarify, this is all inspired by Forgy's Arcade and his series Build the Roster. Shout out to him. He's one of my favourite YouTubers, and I love that series. And one of my favourite videos is Sega Smash, where he looks at an alternate timeline where Masahiro Sakurai left Nintendo and went to Sega and made Smash Bros with them and used their characters. Now, I love this video. It's one of his best. But it got me thinking, I like making up rosters. What if I did that? And I also thought, what's my favourite game company? Capcom. Okay, I'll plagiarise one of my favourite YouTubers and do the same thing as him, but it's significantly lower quality, less funny, and with Capcom instead of Sega. Now for the rules. Rule 1. Unlike in Forgy's video, I will be covering guest characters, but to prevent me from just listing off characters I want in Smash, every guest character has to have some kind of connection to Capcom. Sorry, Lara. Rule 2. Just like with both Forgy's video and the real Smash Bros, only video game characters are allowed. No licensed games made by Capcom, game original characters only. With one kind of exception I will get to much later. Rule 3. For every Echo Fighter, I must replace him with another Echo Fighter. But unlike Forgy's video, I'm not worrying about clone characters. I only care about official Echo Fighters. Clone characters can be replaced with a full character. And if you're wondering why, Rule 4. This is the big and final one. Each game won't take place in their original year. Instead, they will come out in the final full year of a generation. So, for this game, it will come out in 2000. If you're wondering why I'm doing this, well, to put it simply, I'm a coward who doesn't want to miss out on characters because games didn't come out on time. Look, if you actually care, leave a comment and I'll redo the rosters to fit the time the actual Smash came out. And with those out of the way, I actually have one last thing to say. As much as I love Capcom, I don't know everything about them, or their characters. So, for a lot of the characters' moves, I'll be using info I've gotten from other people, or just making my best assumptions. But finally, with all of that out of the way, let's finally begin part 1 of this series and build the roster for Capcom Smash. Roll the intro. Starting off with an easy one, Ryu. This one is so self-explanatory that I feel like explaining it to you is kind of redundant, especially since Ryu was already in Smash Bros, so we already know how he would fight. So instead, I'll use this segment to explain a little extra challenge I decided to do for this roster in particular. So, for the first video, I wanted to do something interesting, and that is to make each Capcom character a parallel of every Nintendo character in Smash 64. Now I won't do that for every game, as it would make things really restrictive and allow for less variety as I would like, but for the first roster with the fewest characters, I'll include this bonus challenge. So, Ryu is going to be a stand-in for Mario, obviously, as the company's biggest mascot. So, with the most obvious pick out of the way, let's move on to some less obvious but still safe picks. Cody. So, for a parallel to the Donkey Kong series, I needed a game that, while not a spin-off, is still set in the same universe as Street Fighter, and thankfully we have just that with Final Fight. And as for the character, it has to be one of the main 3 from the first game. And while an argument could be made for Hagar, as he was the Final Fight rep for the Versus games, I decided to go with Cody because A, this game has nothing to do with the Versus series, and B, according to a quick Google search, he is the most popular of the 3, and also he's clearly Capcom's favourite, as his character has evolved from a protector to criminal to mayor. So clearly Capcom is willing to do interesting things with him, And as for his moveset, this is a pretty easy one, as he's already been in a fighting game. And while not a platform fighter, many of his moves can be ported over, and hey, due to the more cartoony nature of platform fighters, let him pull out more of the weapons from the Final Fight games, give him a knife throw for his neutral B or swinging a pipe from his side B. And he will be somewhat similar to Link, where his design would change in each Smash depending on the most recent appearance, such as his jumpsuit from Street Fighter 4 or a suit from Street Fighter 5. And speaking of Link, Jill Valentine. So, for Link's parallel, we need a rep from Capcom's second biggest series, and that would be Resident Evil. As for who to pick, I went with Jill, because not only did Resident Evil 3 come out the previous year, meaning she was the most recent protagonist, but she was also the only one at the time to have appeared in multiple games, showing Capcom had some preference for her. And, using hindsight, later on she would go on to be in Dead by Daylight alongside Leon, and that would become much more important later on, and she went on to be one of Capcom's most popular female characters, so I think she's a perfect choice. And as for her moveset, I know she's already been in a few fighting games, but Marvel 3 uses RE5 Jill, who's quite different, and in Marvel 2 she uses the zombies for some of her moves, which I don't really like. So I'd say make her similar to Snake, giving her a bunch of grenades and guns, and a cool idea for her up-B is to let her shoot a rocket launcher from Marvel 2 at the ground, and she uses the explosion for the upwards momentum. And looking at the future games, she has lots of alternate colour potential where they change the model, like her RE1 outfit, or when we use the remake design, make her one of her original RE3 design. Mega Man. Another very safe and easy bet. Mega Man was one of Capcom's first breakout stars, and while they've pretty much forgotten about him until this year, this was back at the turn of the century, and Mega Man was thriving with the X Games and the Zero spin-offs, so he definitely deserves to be here. And just like Ryu, he was already in Smash Bros, so his moveset is already laid out for us. So, I don't have much to say about that. Yeah, I don't know what to say. This is the same as Ryu, but at least with Ryu I had other things to talk about. But here, no, I got nothing. It's almost like I don't have any of my own footage and I have to use someone else's. Oh well. Sakura. So, for Yoshi's replacement, I need a spin-off of Street Fighter, and that would be the Alpha games. And I had to think long and hard about which Alpha character to pick. I considered Rose, she's pretty cool. And I also considered, and I'm just kidding, I immediately knew it had to be Sakura. She's not just the most popular Street Fighter Alpha character, no, she's the most popular Street Fighter character, period. So of course I'm including her. And as you're going to hear me say a lot throughout this series, as a fighting character, a lot of the work is already done for her moveset. Again, I know this is another quick one, but we're still at the point where all the characters are pretty obvious. Maybe wait until the later videos for some more odd choices. Strider, hear you. Okay, so this is the first character who I don't really know much about. I know Strider's a ninja, I know he's cool, and I know he was big in the 90s, so I know I had to include him. And Smash Bros already has two different ninjas in Greninja and Sheik, so there's a precedent already set for how he would play, and you could steal a few moves over from them, such as Greninja's side B, and as for Strider himself, give him a lot of sword swipes, and for his up B, make it similar to Steve by letting him use his glider, give him an initial boost upwards, and then he glides and can accidentally go off stage, if he's not careful. And yes, I know I didn't mention Kirby once. Look, there are some characters I have to include, even if they aren't a parallel to anyone. Arthur. Side note, I tried this game for the first time for this video, and I probably just suck, but this game is really hard. Anyways, as for Arthur, I know he's been in Marvel, but I decided it'd be cool to make him a tank. Yes, I know that's not accurate to Ghosts and Goblins, or at least I think. This is another series I don't know much about, but I'm doing it because 1, compared to everyone else in this roster, you can't tell me the guy in the suit of armour isn't the heaviest out of them, and also, I wanted a tank because I like tanks in Smash. And as for moves, again, I don't know much about his games, but from what I have played, let him throw one of his fire attacks for a neutral B, and let him charge a space stab by holding B. Morgan. Rounding out the last of the base 8, and with Pikachu standing, I decided to go with Morgan, because out of every series from the base 8, I feel Darkstalkers is the most deserving of 2 reps, as it was Capcom's second biggest original fighting game series, and Morgan to this day is still one of Capcom's most popular characters, and is constantly included in crossovers. She was in every Marvel vs. game, and was the only non-Street Fighter character in Capcom vs. SNK 2, so she definitely gets in. And seeing how Capcom has continued to treat Darkstalkers by doing literally anything with the IP but make a new game,
Putting multiple characters in this crossover series long after Darkstalkers ended is something I can definitely see Capcom doing. And say it with me now, as a fighting game character, most of the work is already done for a moveset. But one thing I would add is since she has wings and can canonically fly, give her a lot of jumps similar to Kirby. And with that, we've gone through all 8 base roster characters. I feel I've picked 8 characters who will either be the best representation of Capcom in the 90s, but now that they're out of the way, we can move on to the 4 unlockable characters, who are actually a bit more of a surprise, as I didn't spoil these in the intro. So with that said, let's move on to the unlockable characters with...
Ken. Okay, not that interesting of a start, but it's Ken. Of course he's being included. Not only is he one of the main faces of Street Fighter, but he's already in Smash Bros. And the last character that is true for, so I can't skip my movesets in that regard anymore. But he's the perfect parallel to Luigi, being a character who in the first game would play very closely to Ryu, but as the series would go on, he would become more different and become his own fighter, which is exactly what happened to Ken in Street Fighter. Jin Satome. Okay, I was already pushing my knowledge with Arthur and Strider, but at least I have their games and they're in Marvel 3 and Infinite. But Jin? Nah, no experience with him. So I'm doing a lot of guesswork here. But he is a fighting game character, I'm not saying it again, and while I was tempted to make him fight with the mech, kinda like Bowser Jr. with the clown car, the mech is just too good for Final Smash material when we get to Brawl. And besides, he's fought without it in the Marvel vs. games, and as for parallels, Captain Falcon, as he is a character in his own series who spends all his time in a vehicle and has to have a moveset created for a crossover fighting game. Kind of perfect, really. Akira Kazama. For Nessa's stand-in, I decided to go with a series that, while popular, is definitely more of a bonus inclusion compared to the base roster, and that would be Rival Schools. Now, I'm not an expert, but I'm pretty familiar, so I'll do my best, but feel free to correct anything. And you might be wondering, why not Batsu, as he was the protagonist, and that was for 2 reasons. 1, Akira is the most popular character, and that triumphs protagonism and crossovers, and because I call a day for Batsu later, so stay tuned. And as for Akira, I do have a few ideas for a move, but they'll pull out a motorbike similar to Wario, and for a final smash, she has to pull out Edge and Gan for a team attack. Felicia. And with our final character, we come to Jigglypuff's stand-in, and as previously mentioned, since Darkstalkers is the Pokemon equivalent for this game, I had to pick a second character, and that was a very easy pick. Felicia, as the second most popular character behind Morgan, was an easy choice, and this game can really lean into her career as a showgirl by making her even more energetic and lively, if that's even possible, by giving her some high jumps and let her use her tail as a grapple for her up B. And for her final smash, let her summon a swarm of cats on her opponents and have them make a large cloud like in old cartoons. Look, at least one Darkstalkers character has to reference their goofy aspects. And with that, we come to the end of part 1 of Capcom Smash. I hope you all enjoyed it. I had a fun time. It was fun to use a video edit for the first time, and I really like sharing my ideas and doing fun things with them. This all started with me first finding a free forward editor and making the initial roster. Then I decided to make new challenges approaches for each character. And then I made the custom intro, and I decided to make a full video and even create this YouTube channel for this purpose. So with all that, I hope you enjoyed. Please like and subscribe, and I'll see you all for part 2 in Capcom Smash Melee. Bye!